Okay, today we're going to be talking about the thought of the Russian novelist, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky is a notoriously wonderful, but also a notoriously challenging writer. Somebody for whom philosophical ideas and very large-scale ideas are crucial. And so his novels are wonderful, they're filled with lots of characters, but also there are a lot of very deep ideas going on in them. And he's partly commenting on those ideas. In that way, he's different, I think, from Leon Tolstoy. Tolstoy has some ideas that are involved in his novels, but you can usually tell quite easily what they are. In Dostoevsky's case, the ideas play a much larger role and seem to me more central to what's happening. In any case, there is Dostoevsky. As you can see, he's a serious sort of guy.
Check out that beard.
But yeah, check out that beard. We recently had here in Austin the World Beard Competition. And there were people with beards down to the floor. It was really quite remarkable. But this would not have won a prize in the beard competition, but it would have been pretty darn good. Now, he does rank among the greatest novelists, not only in Russian, but in any language. Friedrich Nietzsche read Dostoevsky and described it as one of the greatest strokes of fortune of his life. Dostoevsky himself was somebody who had a rather dramatic early life. He was somebody who, in his youth, was a socialist. He was opposed to the Tsar. He wanted to move Russia in a democratic direction and in a very different direction from its tradition. He ended up being arrested and taken to a prison camp where he was lined up with some other dissidents to be shot. It got to the point where he was kneeling along with these other people there in the middle of a field. The soldiers had drawn out their muskets and pointed them at the people's heads when somebody suddenly rode up on horseback with a letter from the Tsar commuting their sentences to imprisonment. It is thought this was probably staged, that is to say, it was to terrify people. There never was an intention to carry out the death penalty. But whatever it was very effective. It terrified people. And it changed Dostoevsky's life. He ended up spending a number of years in this prison camp then, after this incident, where the only thing he had to read was the New Testament, which he read over and over again. And he internalized a great deal of that. He became a very devout Christian. And his works ended up being banned in Russia after the Communist Revolution for a time. They were eventually legalized again. But why? Why were they banned? Well, partly because in it he wrestles with the questions that he had wrestled with as a young person, but came to very different conclusions. In fact, the view that he ends up emerging with is a version of conservatism. Now, what do I mean in saying Dostoevsky is a conservative? We're going to encounter, among the ideas of the 20th century, a number of different political philosophies and political ideologies. And so it's going to be important for us to try to have some idea of how certain people define the terms. These are things that often don't have very precise definitions, and so I'm often going to be, as a philosopher, trying to pin them down and at least have definitions that apply for certain figures. Maybe I don't know what fascism is, but I know what Mussolini means by fascism. Maybe I don't know what this or that is, but here's what this figure thinks it is. And so here's what I think Dostoevsky means in considering himself a conservative. Somebody who believes in ordered liberty. What does it mean, ordered liberty? Well, basically freedom, yes, that's the liberty part, but within a structure that enables you to predict the effects of your actions. And so it is important for people to have the liberty to follow their own conceptions of the good, for people to be able to formulate their own ideas about what a good life is, what a good form of political organization would be, and so on and so forth. But also to have people follow these within a framework of order, within the rule of law, within a framework of less formal orders in society, so that you have some idea of what the effects of your actions will be. And so the thought is, look, you can't really have liberty unless you can predict the effects of your actions, unless you know what choosing that option really entails. And for you to be able to know what that option entails, you have to have an orderly society, one where it's predictable what the effects of that will be, where things are constrained by certain informal practices, certain customs, certain norms, but also by a formal structure of law. So he thinks it's important that we have the rule of law, but also that social institutions be structured in a way to lead to a sort of ordered life that respects liberty, but also gives society a certain kind of strength. Edmund Burke, a conservative, called these little platoons. The little platoons that form parts of the organization of society that are in between the individual and the state at large. So there are many of these. What are some forms of organization that exist between each individual person and then the government? Sorry. Some of you are mumbling, but I can't actually hear what you're saying.
Maybe the NRA.
The NRA, okay, yes. The National Rifle Association. Yes, that's one example. There are lots and lots of informal or formal organizations of that kind, right? So you've got some of these with political goals. Some of these are not. You might have the Audubon Society that is dedicated to bird watching. You might have people on the other side of various political divides, like Move On. You might have organizations of all kinds, right, of that sort of level, where there's an association of people who sign up because they're interested in a certain kind of thing or they're pursuing a certain kind of goal. What are some other examples of organizations that exist between the individual and then the government at large? Yeah.
Religion.
Good. Religion, churches, synagogues, mosques, things like that. Religious organizations. Again, some of them might be formal organizations where you formally join. Some of them might be quite informal, like a group of people who just meet together to discuss spiritual texts. Yes? Good. Businesses, corporations. Those are things that are structures of people who bind together for a sort of common goal, for a common interest. Yeah? Good. Political parties, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Green Party, etc. Political parties are examples of these kinds of organizations. Some others. Yeah? Schools, exactly. Look, you're in one right now, a university, right? That's a form of organization. And if you doubt it, just think, yeah, I'm not going to pay attention to the catalog or all those rules. I'll just do what I want. You probably won't get a degree doing what you want. I luckily went to college in the 70s when you really could more or less do whatever you wanted to get a degree. It was kind of awesome. And there are still a few places that are like that. A friend of mine went to Brown, and the rule at Brown was finish 30 courses at Brown. That's more or less it. My college was a little more structured than that, but not much. Major in something. Take 2 courses in humanities, 2 in social sciences, 2 in natural sciences. Boom, you're done. Here it's much more like the maze of ancient Greek myth, right? Find the Minotaur. We call it a bachelor's degree. Anyway, so yes, universities, schools, colleges, things like that. Can you think of other examples of such organizations? Yeah.
Cultural organizations now?
Yeah, cultural organizations. So the Austin Symphony, let's say. Or I'm on the board of an organization like that, the St. Cecilia Music Series that puts on Baroque music concerts. And so there are all sorts of organizations like that, dedicated to the arts or dedicated to specific purposes. They're not religious organizations typically, they're not political, they're not educational, they're cultural in a broad sense, and there can be many different ones of those. Some of which you sort of recognize from things like, okay, symphonies or concert series or book clubs, literature societies, or it might be a bunch of people who are fans of comic books who form a club to pursue comic books, or, I'm part of one. There's an organization of people who live in Northwest Austin and who play Pokemon Go. And we get together for all these raids and so on. And look, I'm a total piker there. Most of them are level 40, so it's awesome. I just get to go along. It's like, oh wow, we beat them with 4 people. And it's like, all right, never mind that. But there can be all sorts of societies like this for all sorts of purposes. So there's a huge structure to society, and Dostoevsky and other people who are conservatives in his sense think that's largely what makes a society strong, the strength of those kinds of organizations. Well, there's another way in which he understands this. He says, look, fundamentally, this is a philosophy built on respect. Why? Respect for other people, respect for their conceptions of the good, respect for their ideas about how they want to live. It's not an attempt to try to substitute your vision of things for their vision, instead to allow them to pursue their vision, so long as it doesn't destroy that structure of society that enables people in general to understand how they're able to structure their lives. So there might be certain things that are so destructive to that social fabric, either by violating the rule of law or by destroying these social institutions that they're damaging. However, otherwise, people should be respected, and their ability to pursue the good in their own lights, in their own way, should be respected. So this respect is broad. It includes not only other people now, but a respect for the future, a respect for those who are going to come later, and a concern to preserve society for them. Also a respect for the past, a recognition that the past consisted of a lot of human beings trying to solve similar problems and doing the best they could in solving them. And so it involves all of those things, also a sense of self-respect. Respect for yourself as someone who is an agent capable of making choices. That at least is how he sees this. And he ends up concluding that, maybe surprisingly, a lot of seemingly appealing ideas actually stand in violation of this, or in some tension with it. But in any event, all that's really background, so that we can appreciate some of the story he's about to tell. I should say, he's not a conservative in the don't make changes sense. Sometimes people talk about conservatives as ones who don't want change, and people who are liberals as ones who do want change, but that's not really accurate in his case at all. One thing that was a constant between the youthful Dostoevsky and the mature Dostoevsky is that he did think society in Russia and government in Russia were in some sense fundamentally broken, and he wanted them fixed. So he attacked feudalism, he attacked the idea that some people should be wealthy landlords and others should be serfs. He does try to break down barriers between social classes, and he sees that as following from this philosophy of respect. Everybody deserves respect, so there shouldn't be some people who are naturally viewed as rulers and other people as ruled. There shouldn't be some people who are in effect slave owners or the serf masters and others who are serfs or slaves. And so he does see a lot of things as following from this that require deep changes in society. He's not opposed to change for its own sake. Now, the one other bit of important background is that he does see Christianity as very important to actually a conception of ordered liberty, and to the kind of respect that he thinks is basic. Why does he think so? Well, he says in Christianity, everybody has a dignity. Everybody is to be respected as a child of God. So there's a sense in which there is a deep sort of, you might say, equality that exists. Not that people are equally tall, or equally athletic, or equally smart, or equally knowledgeable, or equally anything, but they are equally valuable as children of God. And so he says, Christianity has that basic sort of respect for everyone. Everyone is a child of God, so everybody deserves some level of respect and even love as a fellow child of God. The people deserve respect, they deserve empathy, they deserve even love. And now he worries because he looks at Russian society in the 19th century, he sees Christianity as in decline. And he says, wait a minute, without that Christian foundation, where do these ideas about equality, about human dignity, about human value come from? He's worried that foundation for basic human respect is being undermined. And he's worried about what can possibly replace it. So he's concerned about that foundation for respect. Now, you may or may not share his views about Christianity, but he does think, and I think here he's raising a deep question. If we think that all people are valuable and have a dignity, that all people in fact are equally valuable, if we don't say it's because they're children of God, then why is that true? What do we say at that point? And he's worried that if you don't have a good answer, that equality and respect for human beings, that a sense of human value, of human dignity, is going to be undermined. So Dostoevsky's point here might look like initially a very sectarian one. Well, if you start with Christianity, here's where he thinks you end up. But I think it's a more basic challenge even than that. He is saying, suppose you don't want that Christian foundation for this belief, well, you better have some other foundation. What is it? And his worry is that it is being undermined without something to replace it. And he sees that is immensely dangerous. Well, let's take a look at the actual story. What we're going to look at is not the entire work here of the brothers Karamazov, which is there in the original Russian, but one particular chapter, the Grand Inquisitor chapter. And it is a chapter that is, I guess, much more often read than the rest of this novel. It's a great novel, but here is one of the key places where philosophical ideas emerge in the novel. And the setting is in a way remarkable. Jesus comes back to Earth during the most intense period of the Spanish Inquisition. Now, by the way, this is a story within the story. One particular character has written this story and is showing it to another character. Okay? So, Jesus comes back in the midst of the Inquisition. The crowd recognizes him. He starts performing miracles. So he cures a blind man, for example, restoring his sight. He raises a girl from the dead. He does a variety of things that Jesus is actually described as doing in the New Testament. And so here, for example, is a painting of Jesus restoring the sight of a blind man. Now, the Grand Inquisitor sees all of this. And what does he do? Does he fall down on his knees and pray? No. He arrests Jesus. Okay, he seizes him. And he takes him to a prison. He tells him that he's going to be burned at the stake the next day. And he says, look, right now you think, oh, how can I possibly do that? The crowd was pleased with the miracles. They were excited to see you. But let me tell you something. The crowd is fickle. The very people who were cheering you today will be throwing logs on the fire tomorrow. And so the Grand Inquisitor wants to get rid of him. Now, why? There are lots of great artistic representations of this, by the way. Here's one drawing, here's another. And here is, well, really the Grand Inquisitor then turning to Jesus and saying, look, you really blew it, okay? You came to Earth the first time, and you messed everything up. You didn't do any of it the right way. Why not? Well, you gave people freedom. The freedom to believe or not to believe. The freedom to follow the path that you sketched out, or the freedom to reject it and deviate from it. And he said, that has brought people nothing but torment. So, in effect, he's saying, look, Jesus, you came, and you actually did respect people. You granted them liberty. You granted them freedom. You were acting toward respect with human beings as children of God. You were actually showing them love. And what was the effect of that? It brought them nothing but torment. Now, why? Well, the Grand Inquisitor continues. He says, look, freedom and happiness are at odds with one another. You gave people freedom, and they made a mess of things. It is not kind to people to give them freedom. And he says, but the church has stepped in where you failed. The church has taken that freedom away. It has told people what to do and what not to do. It has given them direction, and they love it. And so the church has said, we're going to put all authority within the church to determine what ought to be done and what shouldn't be done. And now you, Jesus, you don't have the right to change anything. The church has solved this problem. You told people it was up to them to decide what to do, to follow or not to follow. You told them it was up to them to believe or not to believe. And that has caused all sorts of trouble. The church, luckily, has taken freedom away and solved the problem. Now, why is it done? For the sake of happiness. People don't like to have responsibility. They don't like to have the freedom. They want to be told what to do. Now think about this for a moment before we go on to the details. Are there cases where you really do want to be told what to do? You don't just want to be given the freedom to do it your own way. You want people to tell you what to do. Some of you are nodding. What are some cases like this?
Surgery.
Surgery. Okay, good. Yeah, surgery. You know, I don't want the doctor who is operating on me to follow my directions. I want the surgeon to actually employ knowledge of surgery and medicine that I lack. Now, I could be like this friend of my grandfather's and say, I don't trust you. I want to do it. I want it done my way. And so this guy actually refused anesthesia. He was having some kind of abdominal surgery. He said, I want you to set up a mirror. I want to watch everything that's happening. And I'll tell you what you're allowed to do and what not to do. That requires a very strong-minded person, okay, to do that. But that guy, according to my grandfather, actually did it. Most of us are not like that. Most of us say, yeah, doctor, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do myself. And in particular, when you start cutting me open, I don't know what to do. You knew what's best. Other situations where you want to be told what to do. Yeah?
Someone that cooks my food, like at a restaurant.
Okay, good. Somebody who cooks your food, right? I go into let's say it's a very simple restaurant. I know how to cook an egg. So if I've ordered an egg, I don't mind telling them how I want it done. But if it's some more complicated dish, I do want, suppose I go in and I say, oh yeah, I want the chili relleno with the walnut sauce, right? I don't know how to make that. And so I want them to make it for me, of course. And if I'm, let's say, in a cooking class, I want them to tell me what to do. I don't want the cooking instructor to say, here's a poblano pepper. Here is some ground meat. Here are some walnuts. Here's a little bit of sherry. Go. Like, yeah, I want you to tell me what to do. That's the point of the recipe. Other cases like this. Yeah.
Traffic lights.
Sorry again?
Traffic lights.
Traffic lights. Okay, good. I want the light to tell me whether to stop or whether to go. I don't want it to say, oh yeah, we have these new blue lights, and that just means do whatever you want. Right? Actually, from what I could tell, all traffic signs and signals in Costa Rica when I was there meant do whatever you want. And some places are kind of like that. But most times they didn't bother with them. There would just be these intersections, and somehow, I don't know what happened. I lived. That's all I knew. But yes, there are times like that when we want to be told what to do. Now, on the other hand, there's surely cases where you don't want somebody telling you what to do, where you want to be able to decide for yourself. What are some cases like that? Marriage. You'd like to choose who to marry yourself and not be told who to marry, right? In the Republic, Plato has this vision where people will actually be paired up by somebody else, and there will be certain festival days, and they will be wild sexual orgies, but only certain people will be allowed to participate, and they'll be paired up by the great matchmakers who will pretend it's all random, but it won't be. And most of us react to that by thinking that is so creepy. Yeah. In fact, once I was part of this exercise where I had to play the role of Miletus, the prosecutor of Socrates, demanding the death penalty. And this was one of my key arguments. Socrates has argued for this, and other utterly unspeakable things in the Republic about relations between men and women and children and all this stuff. And so, anyway, I digress. But yes, most of us think these kinds of basic, very personal decisions are things where we don't want to be told what to do. We want to be able to pursue that ourselves. Other cases. Hygiene. Well, I don't know, it kind of depends, right? I do want the dentist to tell me how to floss my teeth, but yeah, I'm going to leave that one up. Others, yes. Say it again. Oh, career choice, yes. You want to be able to have a choice of your careers, right? What are you going to major in? What if somebody told you what to do? What if you just went to the main building and there was a big machine there that told you what you were to major in? And it just, I don't know, maybe it took a picture of you and it asked you a couple of questions, kind of like these Facebook quizzes, right? You're a mechanical engineer. And it's like, wait, what? I don't even know what that is. And, that would be a bizarre thing, right? You want the choice of careers. And it would be very strange to actually have a system, although it has existed in the 20th century, as we'll see. There have been systems that selected people and said, all right, you're going to be this and you're going to be that. But most of us think that's something where we really want to be able to choose ourselves. In any case, why do we want that choice? We think it's fundamental to just respecting us and our visions of how to live. Well, the Grand Inquisitor goes on to think about Jesus and the three temptations. Jesus goes off in the New Testament for 40 days and 40 nights and spends that time in the wilderness, where he encounters Satan, who gives him three temptations. And in every case, the Grand Inquisitor is telling Jesus in this story, you made the wrong choice. Here is the first temptation. If you're the Son of God, tell those stones to become bread. Jesus answered, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. And by the way, I apologize for the background here. It looked great on the screen, but I realize in the lighting of this room, it's a little hard to read the text. So I think online you won't have trouble, but when you look at the slides, but if you do, let me know and I'll decrease the significance of these backgrounds. But okay, so turn these stones into bread. Here is in effect the temptation. You can produce food by magic. Okay? How do people get enough to eat? Why is there a shortage of things? Why is there scarcity? You can go like that and produce bread out of stones. You can go like that and turn water into wine. You can do all these things to meet human needs. Why don't you do it? Jesus says, man does not live by bread alone. But now, the Grand Inquisitor said, wrong choice. You should have done it. You should have solved problems of scarcity. People want to be fed. They want these things. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody in the world could have enough of anything they wanted? And so he said, look, people want to be fed. They want to be taken care of. And Ivan, who is the character in the story, who is the author of this tale, has the Grand Inquisitor saying, in the end, they, the people, will lay their freedom at our feet and say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. Take care of us. And here is the basic point. Ivan is saying people don't want to be respected. They actually want to be treated like sheep, like children. They want to be taken care of. Really, every one of us imagines this state of being in our mother's arms, let's say, and having all of our needs taken care of. That's really, all throughout life, our ideal. People want to be fed. They want to be taken care of. And so, you want to make people happy, that's how you do it. Don't give them freedom. Don't allow them to make choices. That makes life difficult. How great would it be if we could just sit there like little babies being rocked to sleep and have all our needs being taken care of? Or like a cat. Yes, my wife has this theory that cats are an alien species that has enslaved us all. Because after all, people keep cats, they feed them, they clean up their poop in litter boxes. I mean, really. It does feel a little bit like slavery. In any event, I'm being silly. I mean, not really. But still, you could say, yeah, I mean, like a cat, like a dog, right? People talk about a dog's life. Why? Because the dog is taken care of. It's fed. It doesn't actually have to make hard decisions on its own. And so here's the point. People on this view want to be treated like children. This is a very old idea. Here is one of the very first philosophical texts that we have in existence. It's an ancient Egyptian text called the Instruction of Anu. And it goes like this. It's all about a father giving his son advice about how to live and how to become virtuous. And the father goes on and on. Here's what you do, here's what you do. It's kind of like Polonius and Hamlet, but in much greater way, giving advice. And then the son finally gets a chance to talk, and he complains, look, all these sayings are excellent, but doing them requires virtues. You're expecting me to be actually virtuous. You're expecting me to be prudent, to exercise self-control, to actually think about the future, to be generous, and so on. And the son says, I don't want to do that. Okay? It's like, great, Dad, if you want me to grow up to become a very self-controlled person, virtuous person. But he says, look, you, my father, you who are wise and strong of hand, the infant, in his mother's arms, his wishes for what nurses him. Look, says he, when he finds his speech, he says, give me bread. And that is, in effect, what the son is telling the father. Don't ask me to be virtuous. Don't ask me to make the right choices. Don't ask me to exercise self-control. Just take care of me. Give me bread. And it's a stark contrast. Already, you can see the core of Dostoevsky already in that little dialogue from ancient Egypt between father and son. The father saying, I'm going to try to teach you to make your own choices. And the son saying, I don't want to make my own choices. Just tell me what to do and take care of it. Well, Dostoevsky and the Grand Inquisitor here are basically saying, yes, people are really like the son in that story. They just want to be taken care of. They want to be protected. They want to be fed. They want to be nourished and nurtured. They don't, in particular, want to think. They don't want to decide. They don't want the responsibility. They don't, in short, want to grow. There's a wonderful scene right at the end of the movie 1776 about the Declaration of Independence, where Judge Wilson from Pennsylvania, who is this very mild-mannered guy, suddenly finds that the whole decision of American independence is up to him. And John Dickinson is trying to urge him to resist, to vote no on independence. He said, but you don't understand, John. I don't want to be remembered. I'm not like you and these other men here. If I vote with them, I'll just be one among dozens. But if I vote no, I will be the person who prevented American independence. And he says, I didn't bargain for that, John. I just don't want the responsibility. Well, That is the view that the Grand Inquisitor has of human beings. We don't want the responsibility. In the end, we don't really want to choose because it makes us take responsibility. Here's the second temptation. If you're the Son of God, throw yourself down from the top of the temple. It's written that the angels will save you. Jesus said, it's also written, thou shalt not put the Lord thy God to the test. Now, once again, the Grand Inquisitor says, you made the wrong choice. What is Jesus being offered here?
Chance to prove God.
Well, yes, the chance to prove, right, that he can perform miracles, that the angels will save him. And the Grand Inquisitor says, look, you should have done it. You expected too much. You wanted love, but not just love and faith and belief, but all of those things given freely. You didn't want to so impress people with your power that people had in effect no choice but to believe it. You wanted people to have a choice. You wanted to show them enough, but not so much that they were compelled to believe, that they were compelled to have faith, that they were actually compelled to follow you. And that was really too much to ask. You should have just treated them like people who would be so impressed by a miracle they would have followed. Don't give them a choice about whether or not to follow. Wow them so much that they have no choice but to follow. And so he says very directly, people are slaves. You think too highly of them. They want to be told what to do. They don't want to act freely. They don't want to love you freely. You'll be kinder to them if you have less respect for them. And this brings out one of the central themes of Ivan's story here. Ivan is saying there is a conflict between kindness and respect. Respect involves putting responsibility on somebody else, whereas kindness often is a matter of taking that responsibility away from them. Now, I should say, that is not Dostoevsky's view. It is not the view of Ilyusha, the other character here who's listening to this story. But it is the view that Ivan is putting forward. Let's move on to the third temptation. Satan offers all the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. And Jesus said, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Here, Satan is offering what to Jesus? Yeah, command of all of the world and its resources. Basically, being the monarch, right? Being in control of everything. Look, you can have the world and everything in it. You can be like the absolute monarch. And Jesus says, get away from us. Now, I love that. Now, here's what the Grand Inquisitor said. Look, do you realize what you gave up? If you had taken the world and Caesar's purple, this idea of political leadership, you would have founded the universal state. That would have given people universal peace. For who can rule men if not he who holds their conscience? That's the impressing with the miracles part. And bread, that's the stones into bread part. And so you could have fed people, you could have taken care of them. You could have so inspired them with miracles that they would have had no choice but to follow you. And you could have ruled and brought about heaven on earth. You could have given us utopia. You could have brought about universal peace and harmony and love. And you said no. No. The Grand Inquisitor says, but don't worry. If you had taken over the world, you could have made people happy. But we've done that for you. Okay, we've taken over that role. The church tells people what to do. The church takes care of people. It makes them happy. It doesn't respect them. It treats them as children, but that's what they want. Now you can see that even though he's a devout Christian, Dostoevsky doesn't have much use for the organized church, at least of his day. But he says, here's the best part. The church even lets people sin. Okay? It tells them that it lets them sin because it loves them. Look, all of us are imperfect. All of us will commit sins. But it's okay. We forgive you. Okay? In the end, everything will be forgiven. And under those circumstances, people will be happy to give up their freedom. They'll be fed. They'll be allowed to follow. They'll even be allowed to sin. They'll be allowed to break the rules. And it'll all be okay. Because the church will take care of them no matter what. They'll be like happy children. And so, the Grand Inquisitor says, look, you turned down this chance, but we've taken it over. We are going to be responsible for human happiness now. We'll treat everybody as little children. We won't respect them. But nevertheless, they'll be better off. However, he says, well, everyone will be happy? Almost everyone. There will still be those who are responsible for making the decisions. They will take all the responsibility onto themselves. They'll take all the freedom onto themselves. They are going to be miserable because they will have all the choices. They will have the curse of the knowledge of good and evil. But all those happy children, they won't have to worry about a thing. They'll be taken care of by their guardians. I've referred to this using Thomas Sowell's term, the vision of the anointed. The idea here is there are some who are the anointed ones. They are the ones who have the knowledge of good and evil. They can actually see what ought to be done. And they lead everyone else, keeping them in a state of being happy children. They take care of them and take all the responsibility on themselves. Now, the knowledge of good and evil, that should ring a few bells, right? In Genesis, that's what constitutes the fall of mankind. And so you might say, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, the knowledge of good and evil. That's not an unalloyed blessing. Indeed, the Grand Inquisitor says it will make these people miserable, but they will at least be able to guide all the others. So he says, yes, some will fall, knowing good and evil, but the others can in effect remain in the Garden of Eden. As long as a few people fall and take all the responsibility onto themselves, the rest can remain unfree, unknowing, but nevertheless happy in the garden. They won't have to leave. They'll just follow the rules. They'll do what they're told. They'll be like sheep. The shepherds will be those who actually have the knowledge and have the responsibility for directing the rest of the flock. But they'll do it for the good of mankind. They'll do it for the greater happiness. So don't worry. Now, how is this going to work out? Well, here is the word. How do the people who claim for themselves the knowledge of good and evil make decisions? How do they know what to do? They say, we'll be free, we'll make all the decisions, you just do what we tell you. Think about parents and small children. The parents do take on that responsibility. The small children have to just listen to what the parents are saying. But now, if society as a whole operates like that, how is it that the parents, or the shepherds here, the ones who are the anointed, who take on this responsibility for themselves, how do they know what to do? Here's the word, okay? You might say that in the background here are the two-level theories we were talking about last week. There's that level, the manifest level, that is to be explained. But then there's this underlying explanatory level. What it gives these people the knowledge of good and evil, they know the base level. They know that hidden level. They have the scientific image to give them an insight that the people there at the level of the manifest image, kind of like the Garden of Eden here, do not have. So these people are happy, but these people know, okay? Now, here's the problem. What's up here in addition to ordinary life, values and things like that? Everything that characterizes the ought, that gives us norms, that gives us rules for life, that gives us moral values, that gives us ethics, that gives us the basis for making decisions. What's down here? Purely the is, purely description. And so the worry is, wait a minute, it's actually the people who are out there in the manifest image who had this idea of ought, of good and bad, of right and wrong, justice and injustice. Down there at the base level, there's none of that. As it were, all of those norms are there in the garden. Leave the garden, and the norms went too. So how do you make these decisions? The worry is that the vision actually cuts the anointed here off from the norms that could guide the decisions. And so, they're going to think, I've got the responsibility now, I've got the control, I make decisions for all of you. But hold on a second, how do I do that? What guides my decision making? Now, in some cases of expertise, right, we can answer this question. The surgeon knows something about surgery and disease and so knows what to do. The cook knows what to do. But how do people know how to direct society at large? The sheep are the only ones, it seems like, who would know what to do. So here's the idea. Those who pride themselves on their knowledge of good and evil, they are actually the ones who tend to have the least knowledge of good and evil. They are the ones who have cut themselves off most fundamentally from the basics of what right and wrong actually are. They're the least equipped to make these decisions. They're the least equipped to guide others. And so the worry is really that as soon as somebody steps out of the flock and says, I'll be the shepherd, I will lead all the rest of you, you don't worry about a thing, they have now separated themselves from what actually gave them the ability to make decisions and guide people. Now, of course, they don't see it that way. In C.S. Lewis's terms, they are men without chests. They are people who no longer have the things that connect. In Humean terms, that connect the is to the ought. In short, they are people who no longer have the sort of ordinary feelings that were capable of bridging that gap and generating these norms. They've cut themselves off from everything that might have given them a foundation for good and evil. So, here's the idea. Dostoevsky thinks you've got to hold yourself accountable to something outside yourself. Now, what is that anchor outside yourself? Well, for him, it's God. It might be something else. But he says, be very, very careful, because you need some sort of anchor. If it's just you, everything collapses into narcissism. Indeed, Nietzsche, near the end, says, look, really, what is the foundation for value? Nothing but become the person you are. Nothing but authenticity. Nothing but something within you. And Dostoevsky says that's a great danger. You've got to search for an earthly kingdom or a heavenly kingdom. Now, you might say, wait a minute, what about human happiness? Why can't we do that? He says, here's the problem. Why is there this stark division? I realize we're out of time, but I'll just say one thing. I have to actually determine what's good for mankind. I have to judge by what I think is best, instead of respecting what other people think is best for them. And so, as soon as I say, I will choose for the good of mankind, it's my vision of the good for mankind, and it ends up collapsing into narcissism in a more indirect way. So I end up being in the position of just looking inside myself.